Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. Welcome back to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. We're on episode 26, which means we have 25 amazing episodes under the belt. And yes, we're not new to this, we're not old to this, we're just here in the now. And I'm just getting back to the house to record. I had to rush back in the fucking snow. It's snowing, of all things, in April in Michigan. But I had to rush back through the snow so I could get to the house, so I could start recording the episode with Mr. Hanna, who just seems to be busier than sin lately. But I was coming back home from the theater from just watching Batman vs. Superman. So yes, I took the bullet. I am a big comic book character fan. But I took the bullet and I went and saw Batman vs. Superman. And honestly, it's a great movie for what it is. You know, it was a little convoluted. They tried to pack a lot of stuff into it. Ben Affleck's costume looks very ridiculous. But when you get down to the basics of it, it actually tackles a aggressive topic. You know, it touches on something very close to home of, you know, gods versus non-gods and how we can make men out to be gods who really aren't, and what should we do in this type of a situation.
I'm glad you had something like that, because when you said it comes close to home, I was like, we've had superhumans busting through buildings in GR.
We have not that we know of. Not that we know of. But no, if we did, I think everybody would know. And, you know, this movie actually made it out to be more real, Mr. Hanna, because in this movie, there was a lot more destruction. There's a lot more death, a lot more wanton death. It actually fit like a comic book. And if you look at the way situations arise, if we look at what would happen if we had to have large-scale military involvement or something like that, we have to understand there's a lot of civilian casualties. And it's amazing that, you know, we see all these movies and people don't think about these things. But then we have a superhero movie, and they took it to a whole different level. And you want to know what the best part of the movie is, though, Mr. Hanna? The best part of the movie is they had a Luthor quote in there.
Really?
Yes, Lex Luthor quotes basically saying, I learned a long time ago that, you know, if God is all-knowing, then why is there evil?
Oh, Batman and Superman, the problem of evil. That's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
That's
It
cool.
was amazing. I'm sitting here in the theater just going, I'm tapping my son on the shoulder like, my kid's like, what the fuck are you talking about, Dad? And I was like, look, this is amazing. Like, I love this right here. Like, this is my new favorite movie just because of that quote. And they go on. But that's what that whole movie, you know, resembles. That whole movie emphasizes, you know, what do you do when you get somebody that's too big and powerful? You have to have checks and balances. And what do you do when you turn into the bad guy? Can you ever get so powerful and do so many good things that in the end you become the bad guy? And throughout the whole movie, you know, Superman doesn't feel like the humanist of the movie. He kind of feels like the guy hiding. And what is his whole motivation? And they point this out throughout the whole movie, even to the end. The whole motivation of Superman is for fucking Lois Lane. It's the died out trope that, you know, the 50s just love to use. But Batman, on the other hand, doesn't stand for that. He's saying, no, I'm going to take him down, and I'm going to kill him, even if that means that I turn into the bad guy in the end. Even if that means that I'm no longer this big, good, you know, stopper of evildoers. I'm going to go take out Superman.
That was Batman's one rule, right? Never killing anyone. I mean, that was one of his, as far as I know, that's his one big rule. Batman did not kill people. One thing that I have not seen the movie. I hope too many spoiler alerts for anybody listening to blow up apart here. You mentioned the collateral damage and very difficult themes that we're seeing in this. I guess it kind of started in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series, but it's nice to see superhero movies growing up. I can't stand Spider-Man movies now. I can't stand the big shiny. Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, when they came out, when Tobey Maguire came out, and then Willem Dafoe was the Green Goblin, I was like 17, 18. I was like, superhero movies. But as I've grown, I want adult comic book movies. I want, the a killing joke. Like these kinds of, the Frank Miller-esque Dark Knight, the Batman series, and the Watchmen, like the adult comic books. And it's nice to see, I guess, superhero movies growing up. They're serious. There's people die in these. It's not, you can't take your kid out to see this stuff. And you mentioned Superman becoming the bad guy, and Batman potentially becoming the bad guy. There's a comic book series that I read, and it will do things to you. It's called Irredeemable. That's all I want to do is plug it. Anybody who's a comic book person, take a look at it. If you torrent it, do whatever you do to find it, because it's not very common. But it is the most adult. It's just brutal. It's, imagine if Superman went insane. Basically, this guy's the Plutonian, and he's indestructible. It's an absolutely adult read, and that's pretty much where I would hope all these movies go, is in the future. Is like that. It's a serious thing.
Well, and it's the funny thing is, and I don't think a lot of people will pick this up, but in the reviews and stuff like this wasn't a big thing. That, I mean, even in the end, Superman literally stops what the fuck he's doing. He stopped. We're talking this outrageous fucking monster that was created. He stopped what he's doing to save Lois Lane. He doesn't know she's got the kryptonite, wand that he needs to kill this guy. He doesn't know that. And if he does, it doesn't allude to that. But it's amazing that he stops everything he's doing and flies to her because he can hear her and saves her. And while a lot of people may think, hey, that's great, that's heroic, that's something like that, we have to look at where the ethics come into it. He's putting his personal feelings for her ahead of, humanity. And now if he knew she had the wand and he could kill two birds with one stone, forgive for the euphemism there, but if he could do that, then, I guess that's a little bit more acceptable. But that's the whole thing. And in the end, he sacrifices himself. I think in the end, he realizes, hey, I'm too much for me. And I guess, spoiler alert, I guess I have to put a fucking spoiler warning on this. Because, if you haven't seen the movie, this will blow the whole movie into the water. But, the amazing thing about the aspect of it is at the very beginning, and you see Superman fighting this being, and you don't know who the fuck it is. They don't do a very good job introducing it. And you see Bruce Wayne, and he's running, and he saves this little girl, and he goes, don't worry, I'll get you to your mom. And he's not in costume. This is just Bruce Wayne. And he goes, where's your mom? And she points up at the fucking building, and the building's burning and falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see Superman in the sky, and you sit there and you go, "What the fuck? Like, holy shit! That's some real shit. That's the casualties of war. That's the casualties of where we're at." And I think it should make all of us stop to think about what the fuck we do. And I guess we're taking this off on a little bit of a tangent here, but this is honestly, folks. This was not scripted out. This is just talking from the heart. But one of the big things that I've felt lately, and what I've had a harder time getting behind with Bernie and some of the other candidates, is people are so pro-war. We've got Obama using drones. Do we ever stop to think of the innocents? Ever? Is any of this ever worth it? Is killing one life, 2 lives, 3 lives, is killing 10 innocent lives worth it to save thousands of American lives? And I'm sure there's people that sleep easy at night saying, hey, you know what? We're Americans. We should save our first world country, and we should feel... I don't feel comfortable with that anymore. I don't know why, but I don't. I can't fucking sleep at night. I hate war. I will vote against that every fucking time. And I don't believe there should just be some necessary evil that we should just necessarily accept this. I have a big fucking problem with invading other countries and creating massive wars to save people, or that we think we're saving people. We're using military drones to kill people. This whole idea just astounds me that we can literally ignore this. We can just move on with our lives because it doesn't affect us. It doesn't involve in our personal lives. We could be bombarded with it by the media, but it doesn't mean that we're going to lose a loved one. And until it seems to happen close to home, we don't ever stop to say, holy shit, hold our horses here. We don't ever stop to think about all the innocent children and women and men being murdered overseas because of our involvement in war.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how deep the new Batman versus Superman movie is.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it basically, it's what you bring to it. If you bring, a wide worldview and a very empathic worldview and very humane, humanitarian and humanistic worldview. I mean, these kinds of things are going to affect you, and these themes are awesome. That they're in the book. I believe the big fight that you're talking about, going through the building stuff, was from the first Zack Snyder Superman, where he's fighting General Zod, and they're like fist fighting. He's basically another guy from.
I was trying not to give spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, so the whole story and everything, these are things that usually get glossed over in comic book stuff. So, and especially comic book movies. It's awesome to hear, and I'm glad you hit a couple of emotional harpsichord strings throughout that. And I guess we'll see where the rest of the show takes us, because we pretty much that's a pretty strong stream of consciousness. 15 minutes, man.
Well, so how about this? So I guess if we're going to go off on the tangent, we're going to move to the side for one of the segments. Let's look at it this way. Or let me pose this question to you, Chris. Maybe this sounds better if I say it this way. If you could stop wars, but it meant us not being able to get involved in helping, which does the most harm? Is it more harmful for us to not get involved? Or is it more harmful for us to even get involved peacefully and then get the backlash from it against us? I mean, if we get attacked, should we turn the other cheek? Was Jesus right? Should we turn the other cheek? In essence, to our enemies.
That's a problem that I've been thinking about quite often lately. It's the pacifism in itself is essentially it's a victim creator. And I don't, just because I'm a human, because I naturally have instincts to protect my genes, my genetic line, and I guess the people in my social groups and in groups and things like that. I don't know if I could ever be a perfect, complete pacifist. And my assumption is that if you show the non-violent side and enough people just get killed just over and over and over again, I would hope that the oppressor and all the people, whoever, like, they would see this as, being the better person, doing the better thing, and becoming what society should be. Like, you are acting as you would hope society would be. It's one of the things that I've talked about a bunch of times on this show with the non-believer movement and with the humanitarian movement and humanistic movement, and online, and just how you interact with other people. You have to act the way you want the rest of the world to be. But when it comes to like warfare and murder and oppressive regimes, it's like Thomas Jefferson said, sometimes the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots. Some cases, I don't know the answer. I don't think it's very black and white. If this, yes, if then, if that, no. I don't know. I really can't give an answer to that broad of a question. I would hope that if we took more of a back seat and let people find the solutions on their own, that would be good. But let's just say that something is moving through an area and it's a violent virus-like apparition. The next thing you know, 20 years later, you've got this really, really big thing that's now threatening to you. Well, is it the best decision to sit back and not get involved at all, or to help? There's so many things that are happening here, so many variables that I couldn't possibly be the one person to ever really know. That's why I really, really like big groups and communities and people talking things out.
And here's another thought, because you're right, we can't control that. We can't control everything. I mean, that would be ridiculous of us to think that we can control everything. But the difference is if we step up and we speak out and we speak for humanity and we speak for the most humane way to deal and treat other people, the way we would want to be treated, in essence, maybe we could convince other countries to see it that way. It's funny
assuming
in a movie,
they're rational. You're assuming they're rational, though. Like, very irrational things happen sometimes, and it's like you could do the best things in the world, and they look at you like, "Why are you so stupid? You could just take over the whole planet." Like, I don't know. I looked at things like when we deal with incredibly religious zealots, that there's no rationing and reasoning in that. Like that is pure and unmovable, unmalleable idolatry. That's just not gonna your actions are not gonna change them in some cases. And so I don't know.
Maybe that's why we fall more on the social side of things. Maybe that's why we fall closer, on the left side than we do on the right. And we don't fall so far that we want this ideology that free market should dictate, right? We don't want free market to dictate things. And in essence, if we look at how, if we go back to that movie and we look at how things are portrayed, I don't remember these themes coming from the comic books I read as a kid. They probably did, and I just was too young to pick them up. But, it's amazing, what my kids do. But if we go back to that movie and we look at what was happening, in the movie, the main bad guy, Lex Luthor, basically is trying to orchestrate Superman to kill Batman. And they have this whole fight scene, and Batman basically pretty much wins, and then he changes his mind and helps Superman all of a sudden. Because I think he realized the humanity that even him shouldn't be able to decide who lives and who dies. And that's just an amazing premise. And I'm sitting here nudging my son, trying to get my son to see these things. And it's like, how are you not seeing this? You have to listen to me bitch about things. You listen to my podcast. How are you not seeing, this as a trait we should be emulating? And maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. But to me, that's what we should be working towards with the youth of this day. Let's get the fuck off the phones. Let's stop harassing people online. And let's work towards a movement change that we can all be proud of. Let's move towards getting the social norms of society to not be dictated by, free market or by, large corporations. Let's get those out of it. Let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to the base raw where, we get down to us humans interacting, and then let's throw some government mix in there to help regulate some of the crazy-ass ideas, that come out.
Well, whenever I think of the children, like you mentioned, I look at my son and it's like, how do you not get this? How do you not get this? Have you ever read a book or watched a movie that you watched when you were a child, but watched it as an adult and had a completely different experience?
Oh yeah, there's The Perks of Being a Wallflower, one of my favorite books. There's an author, and the author is also the author of this book called Middle Sex. And I read this, I read The Perks of Being a Wallflower, when I was 17 or 18. Great book. If you have never read it, you should go out and you should stop everything you're doing and read that book. That's an amazing book. I love that book so much. But the other one is about this Greek family, and it's about how this individual basically is transgender. They're intersex. They don't understand what's going on. Their family's resistant. It's this big convoluted story. And I'll be honest, it's not the most entertaining thing. Well, I picked that book up about a year ago and reread it. And I sat there and thought, holy shit, like, how the fuck did I miss the undertones of this? How did I miss the fact that, this person's writing this, 15 years ago or something like that, or 20 years ago. I don't remember how long the book was written. And this individual is writing about these issues that look at what we see in the media today. Look at what we're talking about, with our friends online. Transgender people and using the bathrooms, intersex terminology. A couple episodes back, we had Travis from By Any Means podcast, and they were explaining to us about pronouns. Mm-hmm. And we were learning so much from this, and that book all of a sudden makes more sense to me as an adult than it ever did as a young adult.
And so basically my point is that I the same thing happened to me reading things like Lord of the Rings. I read the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit as a child, and they were literal. Everything was literal about that. Goblins, ghouls, orcs, dwarves, elves, wizards. All of the things were literal. And then as I read them when I was 22, 24, finishing up in college and having gone through some literary analysis classes, things, you get a completely different experience. You see that Tolkien spent 20-something years, I think it was, at least a decade, putting together the whole Middle-earth world. And so you've got all the different representations of the different varieties of humans and everything like that. You get a completely different experience. And that's basically what I mean when I say that you look at children and it's like, how do you not have 20/20 hindsight? How do you not know what you're going to know? And it's tough. And I'm probably going to learn this quite difficultly as time goes on when my own daughter is old enough. But like, I try to remind myself of what I was thinking when I was 12, 14, 16, 18. And I think at the time, I thought I knew everything in the world. I thought I had the world solved. Now I realize, as most people do, when you're older, you learn that you know less and less about more and more. And that kind of humility and humble nature is what changes things. And so, like, I would just say that, like, these kinds of stories that people reflect and think about, especially the Superman thing with basically that you've come through, you see all of the different aspects of it. You can reflect and think about it in more of a humane and humble way. And hopefully it just makes you think a little bit more than just it's Hollywood. People are punching faces and things are blowing up. And that's the adult perspective that I like to bring to these movies. And if that's the case, if there's a story there, if there's some substance, then, we've got ourselves a successful story in my mind.
So as we wrap this segment up and we've talked about morality and humanity, we're going to go into our next segment here in just a few seconds, talking to our friend Tiffany about breastfeeding in public, and how you can be a better ally. We'll be right back, everyone, with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Like what you're hearing? Check out more Cellar Door Skeptics every week right here on Spreaker and iTunes. Make sure you come back and check out new episodes with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. And always, remember, prepare for the revolution.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
Hi, this is Sharon Bush, newest and most badass host of the Unbuckling the Bible Belt podcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around for that last segment. As always, I have my co-host joining me again, and we did an interview here with a friend of ours, somebody that I thought was important that brings a different voice to the conversation. And as we're not just an atheist podcast. I mean, we rant about political stuff. We rant about spiritual stuff sometimes. And we like to talk about how to be better activists at home, in the movement, and at our workplaces. And one of the topics that's kind of come up, and I've seen Tiffany, our guest that's coming on here in a few minutes, post about, was breastfeeding in public. And she's been a very avid supporter of openly breastfeeding and how others should help join in. So I thought, hey, what better than to bring somebody on that probably knows a hell of a lot more than me, that's done it, I've obviously never done it, and is able to help the rest of us as allies find a better mode to support her and those that are like her. She is a volunteer at the CFI, so she has her and her husband help run quite a bit of different programs there, and that's actually how I was introduced to her, I don't know, probably about 2-3 years ago. She's also a local volunteer for, and I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, and she's just, I can see her laughing on the other end. It's called La Leche League International, and she's part of one of the local chapters here. And so without further ado, let me bring our good friend, Tiffany, onto the show. Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Tiffany, how are you tonight?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, we wanted to open up this dialogue, and I think sometimes Chris and I, we do a really good job at bringing other people into the conversation, but I think what we really want to do is bring you on because this is definitely a topic that has touched our lives, but only to an extent. You know, my wife fed all of our children, and, Chris's wife is breastfeeding, but, we're not the intimate, we're not the ones that are actually doing the work here. And so I thought, well, hey, let's talk a little bit about the statistics and the facts behind it, why people should choose to do this if it fits their needs. And I want to kind of talk about how we can also maybe dismiss or debunk some of there's sometimes people get misconceptions about it. And then I also want to address very aggressively how we can be better allies, how we can go about our way to figure out if we see a confrontation, how we can support that other individual. So before we go too far, though, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and why you joined the La Leche League and, you know, kind of different other activist opportunities so people can get to know you a little bit better?
Sure, of course. My daughter is 13 months old. She has been breastfed from day one. We had a very challenging start and found myself in need of some help initially. That's when I got in touch with the Little HA League local chapter here in Grand Rapids and found a ton of knowledge and support there. They helped us get over the hump with our issues, and it's been smooth sailing after that. Since then, I've learned a lot and decided that I wanted to become a volunteer with that very same group and in turn help other breastfeeding moms overcome their challenges based on what I had learned and experienced myself. I think overcoming some challenges was really what made me passionate for breastfeeding my daughter. And helping other women to meet their goals too, whether their goal was to do so for 2 days or 2 years. But it really does take a village, and it really does take a network of encouragement and support to make this happen for most women.
Yeah, and for the Little HA League, how long have they been around? Are they an international organization that's been around for years and years and years, or is this kind of a newer, I don't know, maybe a newer activist group that has started up within, let's just say, the last 10 or 15 years?
They have actually been around. This year is their 60-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
They were founded by 4 mothers down south who got together and decided they were going to basically form a little support network in their town, and they've branched out since then to the whole developed world, and even many other second world and third world countries are now starting to have Little HA League chapters to support women as well.
Is this something that's like when we had our child 6 months ago, and they said, oh, there's some support groups and things that can help you directly with the hospital, or is there something that this group works with the hospitals themselves? So is this kind of what they were referring to, or are there other groups besides?
It's a freestanding group that's not affiliated with any hospitals or major health networks. It's completely volunteer run and donation run. Volunteer leaders do go through some pretty intensive training, paramount to what a certified lactation counselor would go through, but not quite the same. There's a whole philosophy that the organization is based around, kind of in a nutshell, supporting mothers and empowering mothers to do what is best for them and their families, as well as great sensitivity to the baby, following their cues and meeting their needs in as gentle an approach as possible. So all the chapters adhere to the same type of philosophy, and sometimes they do work with other groups cooperatively, and sometimes not. It just depends on what there is in the area.
And I think that's actually really good. I mean, if we look at how movements started, I mean, I guess if you look at the way the church, formed and why they formed and what they were able to accomplish for many years, and we could be very critical of a lot of the different, I guess if you want to call it, horrible things the church have brought about, but their great organizational tools are what we use today. I mean, we use those. I mean, we do that through the CFI. You work with the Little HA group. So there's a lot of people that are, benefiting from organizational tactics. And I think this is great because I'll be honest, I wish the hospitals would work with this group a little bit more, because to me it almost seems like if we had this information, for my first wife, it would have gone a lot easier. And then, with my second wife, it probably would have been easier for her to have a support group. A lot of our friends didn't all have kids at the time. And so it was a lot harder, and we didn't go to church. So, there's a lot less people to be able to embark or talk to outside of my parents,
Right. And definitely part of support is the social network. Even if a mother's not actually having problems per se with her breastfeeding journey, it's always a great opportunity just to socialize with other like-minded mothers. Bring toddlers if you have older kids. Let them play together, just make that connection with people who understand where you're coming from and who support your goals.
And I like that. And so, that was kind of one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, is because we knew you had found other ways and you have the passion about talking about it. So let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits that come from breastfeeding. I don't think we have to argue too long, with people about it. But for the most part, there could be others out there that don't know some of the nutritional sides to it.
Definitely. And nutrition is a huge part of it. Mother's milk it's the product of billions of years of evolution, so pretty hard to compete with that. It is perfectly formulated for your child to meet their needs. It's jam-packed with antibodies. I think it's something like 3 million antibodies in just a teaspoon of mother's milk that's going to boost their immune system and help keep them healthier. The benefits, though, do go even beyond nutrition. In my mind, the closeness and the comfort counts for something too. I have found it so much easier as my daughter has started crawling and walking and falling on her butt and bumping her head and all that stuff. It's quick, easy comfort. Or when she decides to go on a nap time strike. It's a great way of helping her to just get calmed down and soothed and into that sleepy mode. A few weeks ago, she had a little stomach bug. She was having a hard time keeping food down, so we nursed a ton, and it kept her hydrated and nourished for a couple days until she felt better. Probably helped her to get over it a little quicker, too. So those are all things to keep in mind, that nursing a child isn't all or nothing. It's not just to do it exclusively or you don't do it at all. The benefits are definitely the milk, but also more than the milk.
Yeah, so there's that closeness bond that you get, from it, that I don't think that you get, from bottle feeding. But I don't know, because I'll be honest, I don't know the science behind some of this stuff, and that's kind of why we brought you on, because hopefully you've been able to do more research than we have.
As the bonding aspect of it goes, there is a very strong hormonal connection. Oxytocin, commonly known as the love hormone, that is released in massive, massive amounts every time a child nurses at the mother's breast. Not to say a person doesn't get that in other ways, skin-to-skin contact, holding your child, caring for them, bathing them. It happens that's how we bond and fall in love with our babies. Moms, dads, all of us have that. But it's definitely released in a massive dose based on the stimulation at the breast that the baby provides for mom. So that brings a whole new magnitude to the bonding that wouldn't otherwise happen.
There's a baby right there. I didn't even see it down below the screen. Yeah, we when we were doing the breastfeeding classes and things before we had our baby not too long ago, they had all kinds of really great things for the parents and mothers who, let's say you had problems with your breastfeeding at the very beginning. There's different resources and things you can do. There were some people that really, really showed dedication, and they had these I guess they would be nipple, like, there were hidden nipples that you could put the formula through, so the baby still has the breastfeeding, so to speak. And I mean, this woman did it for a year, and it was an amazing amount of work. So there's some little things that some women really have trouble with the breastfeeding. Does this group particularly help women that, like you said, you got over the hump, but some people can't? And so they have ways to help with the formula and making sure they get as much health and nutrition and stimulation and everything they need as well if they can't do the breastfeeding.
Yes, absolutely. It's a powerhouse of resources. There are professional consultants at the national and international level that help lead a lot of research and link us up at the local level with some of these different things, be it different technologies or devices or methods that can help mothers out. In my personal experience, not to get too, caught up in all that, but I did need to supplement for a little bit. I had a bout of secondary infection a few weeks after she was born, which went septic. I was in the hospital with septic shock and on an IV antibiotic drip for 3 days. Needless to say, that scraped with illness and recovery, and my body prioritizing keeping itself alive over lactating dried me up, and so I pretty much had to start from scratch. The Little HE League was there every step of the way for me, helping me to not only relactate and bring that milk supply back from nothing, but properly supplement her in a way in which she would get the nutrition she needed, but also that wouldn't interfere with our continued breastfeeding goals. They were an amazing resource for me, and there are a lot of other resources too locally that can help mothers in that way.
That's wonderful.
So I got a question. And maybe this is a little, I don't know, out there, but do they also provide groups and support groups for you were recovering, you weren't able to produce enough milk at that current time. Do they offer, I guess, I don't know if wet nurse is an appropriate term or not. So if it's not, forgive me, I don't know what the appropriate term would be, but do they also offer those type of services as well to help people get through maybe a hard spot such as a hospital type visit like that?
Specifically, they don't actually do milk donations. Wet nurse of modern day would be a milk donor. Typically, a woman would pump extra milk and then donate the bottles of her milk to other mothers in need. Some women affiliated with Little HE League are very avid milk donors, but there is a particular group, Human Milk for Human Babies. There's also the Human Milk Banks of America that will go through and kind of vet people and make sure everything is fine and the milk is, safe and quality, and get it to mothers in need as well as mothers of preemies and sick babies who maybe are unable to breastfeed them but would like to provide the benefits of human milk to their delicate newborns.
Well, cool. And I think that's an amazing resource. And, I personally, for me, I would actually like to see those flourish. And, we can debate different ways on how they should flourish, but to me, those services should be almost a requirement that they be out there. I mean, it makes almost no sense why maybe some companies should just take this up and maybe it'll be a big profit center for them. But to me, it's just one of those things. If these services are out there and there's somebody there to vet, I mean, of course, we wouldn't want some crackhead feeding us, our baby's milk. We wouldn't want that. But, how many of them are probably going to donate? Anyway, but the big thing is if we can get more people on board with that, why would we not push that as a society? That almost seems like a very humanistic thing to be able to help others out. And it's like it's a voluntary basis. I don't, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but nobody coerced you into doing this, did they?
Sure. It's, it's the sort of thing every family needs to make the decision for themselves, what's best for them. But the research is pretty conclusive, like, gosh, why wouldn't you at least want to give it a try? Another event that's coming up, and I'll send you some information on this as well, is the Miracle Milk Stroll that's coming up in May. For the first time, a group of volunteers, including myself, will be bringing this to West Michigan. It's to raise donations and awareness of the benefits of human milk for premature infants and sick babies in the neonatal intensive care unit, both raising funds to help families offset the cost if they needed to purchase human milk from a milk bank, as well as to help encourage milk donors to step forward and help our local families that are in that particular situation and have that need.
And that's amazing. Recently, there was a video, and I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here because I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, especially with your little one in the background there. We don't want to deprive her of any of your time. But, they had there was an article that came out. I don't remember the name of the website off the top of my head. I'll put the link in the description. But they talked about a Costco where women came out and helped support others by breastfeeding in public. And there was an incident where a customer of theirs felt very upset because of some of the people that were talking and some of the people in the store. And so, I thought this would be a good point to talk with you about, because I want to do two things: is how can we help, and B, let's talk about, should places provide nursing stations, or should we work to change society so that instead of providing a separate room, we can get it so that we can normalize it so people don't stare and try and make horrible comments?
Sure. Well, obviously, I'm a huge advocate for nursing in public. I do so myself. I always have, and I always give a thumbs up to other mothers who I see nursing in public as well. I'm not entirely opposed to having a separate area available. Some mothers may not want to be out in public. Some may feel more comfortable being in a separate room. Some may be facing some challenges or possibly be using a nipple shield or a supplemental nursing system that takes a little setup and a little effort to get together, and they may prefer to have privacy to, do everything they need to do. And I think that privacy is nice to have available for them. But I don't think that they should be harassed if they choose not to go into a separate room either. I think that should totally be up to the mother.
I've just never been able to figure out what exactly the argument against it is. I mean, I understand they talk about indecency and things, but I've never really understood why people get so angry about it. Is it that they feel that this is being indecent and that children could see something that they shouldn't see? What is the traditional argument that you hear against this? I mean, what the guy was yelling about in that article, Chris?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it doesn't say whether it was a guy. They basically, the article that I read talked about the reason the woman was having a harder time and the child was crying a lot more because she was having a harder time, I believe, with latching or something like that. So they decided to have a sit-in, or they called it a nurse-in, actually, at Costco to try and help normalize breastfeeding so that others didn't have to go through the same thing.
And I guess, Tiffany, what is the argument that you usually hear against?
Some of the things that I've heard, and kind of my own interpretation of what it boils down to, is a lot of not only society having a negative attitude towards women and women's bodies. I feel like it is a form of body shaming to say that women are being indecent and things of that nature. But I think some of it also comes down to some personal insecurities. I've heard arguments like, a woman's husband might look at you and feel lustful for you. Well, if you're that insecure in your relationship, I don't know, maybe there's some other things to look at there besides what I'm doing. I've definitely heard the whole indecency thing. Anyone who's ever been to a beach in the summertime really can't say much as far as that goes. I show a whole lot less than my bikini does when I'm nursing my daughter.
So the article actually does say they had a lactation room there, and that one of the employees encouraged this young lady to go to the room because she thought it would be a better convenience. And then basically the customer said, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable with this. Why do I have to feel this unwelcome? If I want to sit out here in public, I should be able to."
Sure. And I agree that, it's one thing to just say, hey, this is available if you would feel more comfortable. Some women would. I know now as my daughter comes into toddlerhood, she gets distracted pretty easily. Sometimes, like if I go out to the mall or something, it truly is easier to sit in, a nursing room or something just so she's not distracted by every little thing. But I certainly wouldn't want to feel like I was being pushed or pressured into it either. That's not right.
No. And so as we close the segment out, what do you have tip-wise that you would advise the audience here if they run into these type of situations? How involved should we get? Is there certain things we should say? Obviously I had mislabeled what a wet nurse is because technically, if that's not the term to use, if it's a milk donor, that's what we should be using. So I got to learn something tonight, see? And so the rest of the audience, it would be good if we had other tips or ways that we could go about making sure we're the best allies we can be.
For sure. Well, I think definitely one thing that I would really encourage is, and I'll send you a link to this, to look up the Michigan Breastfeeding Non-Discrimination Act, which was passed in June of 2014, and it grants basically the legal right to women to nurse their babies anytime, anywhere, and grants them immunity from any charges of public exposure, indecency, even if a portion of the breast or nipple happens to be exposed in the process of latching the baby on or anything like that. So being familiar with what the law is definitely key, I think. If someone is being harassed, then clearly that law is being broken, and I think most nursing women would feel very appreciative if a passerby were to stop and say, hey, you know what, by harassing this mother right now, you're breaking the law, you need to stop. I have yet to meet a mother who wouldn't appreciate someone stepping into her defense. If you see a mother even who's not being harassed or anything, just giving her a thumbs up and saying you're doing a great job can really mean the world, especially if she's been struggling at all, physically or emotionally, with her breastfeeding journey. And if it bothers you, don't look.
Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure having a conversation with you, and it was a pleasure to talk about something that, as the summer months come up, I think that we need to be a little bit more proactive in having those conversations at the minimum. And if not, we should definitely, like you had said, kind of help to intervene if there's a need to. And I think that's really important, because if we go back to the article and we go back to, treatment of women, we don't want to make women feel uncomfortable. We should accept them as normal people in society. And I think that, breastfeeding is something that has been a controversial topic for some. Some of me says it's a religious, notion, and once we move past the religious aspect, we may be able to help, retrain some of the people who see it as an indecent proposal. But to me, it's natural, right? If it's the best thing for the baby and it's the best choice that the mother has made, who am I to say, no, you shouldn't do this? I mean, it's not like they're creating harm. So thank you so much, Tiffany. Is there anything else you want to tell us? If anybody wants to support the organizations, I'll post links in the description for it. And if you could send me the link to the Michigan one for the LLI, that'll be the best thing to help support any of those women.
You bet. I will get those out to you.
Awesome. So thank you so much. Make sure everybody sticks around, because in the next 30 seconds, we'll be back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Stay tuned.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Profitcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics
on the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
If you guys like what you're hearing on Cellar Door Skeptics, please consider sponsoring us on our Patreon page. Our goal at Cellar Door Skeptics is to help promote more science, skepticism, secularism, and humanism in the world. We want to create better content for our podcast and for you, the listener, all while trying to help promote local activism. We're going to strive to make better podcasts, and I'll tell you what, we're even going to contribute some of the proceeds to charity. So please join us over at Patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to make sure that you sponsor us for as little as $1 an episode. Thank you guys so much, and prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you for sticking around with us through those last couple segments. We talked with Tiffany Hale about breastfeeding, and before that we had a slight off-topic tangent about morality, superheroes, and the new Batman versus Superman.
That's a good rant, man. That was a good rant. I'll say that's one of our better ones.
It was a little off-topic, but it kind of fit. Because now we're going to talk with Chris Hanna about something that's very close and personal to him. And so I get to kind of play a little bit of the interviewer here. You don't get to hear me interview Mr. Hanna very often. You get to hear him interview me sometimes about my crazy upbringing and my old past beliefs. But I actually get to talk to him about something that he knows a lot more about than I do. And so to lay a little bit of the groundwork, we had a friend of ours share something from The Wire. And they said, oh, this is an interesting article. We should have this conversation, And the name of the article is Why You Shouldn't Share the emotional videos of deaf people hearing for the first time. And I read through the article, and I thought, who better than to have a conversation with than somebody that has had to go through that for many, many years. So, Chris, this is the point in the podcast that I get to let you have a conversation with the audience. I get to ask you the questions and let you answer because I'm very interested to know what your take on this article is.
Well, my immediate response is I love those videos, and I get all teary-eyed and crazy when I see them because they're awesome. They're awesome. To see someone overcome so completely with emotion for having something that either they lost or they never had, but now they have the ability to experience, it really is something, a testament to like just how you can really empathize with somebody's position. 'Cause even if you're a hearing person and you've never not heard before, you can watch that and you can imagine, you can really put yourself in their shoes, like what it would be like to not hear and then hear. And then same with there's some surgeries where people are getting basic black and white shadow vision back in their vision through different kinds of surgeries. There's a lot of really great things that are happening when it comes to senses and connections in the brain and all the different stuff that the advances of modern science and technology, as long as we don't keep listening to Ted Cruz on his science advice. And these videos are great. I like them. I think they're awesome. This article is an argument that I have heard before as far as why you shouldn't share them based on a variety of reasons that we'll probably get into a little bit. But I disagree with the article, and I love when people share this kind of stuff because my basic position is if you're sharing this happy story about people overcoming and science helping people and just good stuff happening in the world, that means you're not sharing some angry video or some mean post or belittling someone or attacking someone. Like, this is a choice you made to share something fun and nice and happy, and that's how I see it.
And so the article is written by somebody who says that they are a CODA, which is a child of deaf adults, and they're involved in the deaf activist community. And so that's kind of, so that kind of puts a different spin on the article, I mean, at first you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, this person's part of the activist community. They're going out of the way to try and support the community in the way they feel it should be possible. And I'll be honest, I'm not part of that community. And so, my opinion is to listen and to understand and to learn and to try and find my place to be the best ally. And the argument that they make is they basically say these inspiring videos continue to push one of the most problematic narratives in the history of the deaf community, that deaf people are broken and therefore need to be fixed. And in reality, there's no such thing as a happy ever after. And so, Chris, I guess on your side of it, on your side of things, if let's say there's 1 million people that are hearing impaired, if one out of those 1 million, even if that's a misleading number, right? It's only one person ever got to hear again. Would that be an amazing thing that you would want to celebrate, or is that something that you would say, hey, no, we don't want this specific narrative because it's basically saying we're lesser of individuals than others?
I would, as a person who would, I've had people ask me serious questions like, what would you do to get your hearing back? The guys on a baseball team in college would ask me, what would you do in horrible, horrible ways that will not be mentioned. But like these kinds of stories, I can see the people's like you said, 1 in a million. What I would celebrate. I would celebrate every tiny bit of it. I don't see it as the society of them being broken. I see it as basically expanding your human experience. There's an entire part of the human experience that you're not getting as a non-hearing, non-seeing, non-speaking, I don't know if they're people that are paralyzed, non-feeling person. So to gain that, you're not taking away from the deaf person in the deaf community. You're gaining something that you did not have before. Now, the issue that where it usually goes when I hear this argument is like there's the deaf communities, there's the blind communities, and they're paralytic communities and things like that. I don't know if they're quite as strong. The deaf community is one that's really strong because for some reason, I've never been able to understand it, is when people seem to leave that community, it reminds me almost a bit of the Hasidic Jewish communities, the Orthodox Jewish communities. Like, they see it as, if you've left it, you're kind of moving on. They shun you, and they, for some reason, they're angry that you leave that community, that community wasn't good enough for you. And it's a surprising in-out group thing that happens here. And I think this woman has kind of got a little bit of that, because nobody is saying that these people are broken. We're saying, here's something that you can do. Here's something that science can help you with. And you can choose not to. Like, we're not going to tie you down and wire your head up and force you to hear again. You know what I mean? It's like these people, they decide that they want to turn those senses back on as best they can. And it's not the same. If you've ever listened to headphones for like a $3 set from like your local gas station, and then you've listened to a set of headphones that cost $500 from a high-end audio electronics, like, that's the quality that you're getting a difference of. The person with the cochlear implant, they don't hear the hi-fi that you hear. They hear very, very reduced and controlled. It's not the same, but it's something. It's like I said, some people can see black and white with this in the shadows with the vision surgery. So it's not the same, but just that little step for some reason upsets people, and I have never been able to understand it completely.
And so I agree with her in the aspect that you're not a broken individual.
No.
Right?
Nobody's really saying that.
But I don't agree. Yeah, but I don't agree with her in that it's alluding to that. I guess I don't, and maybe it's just, my inability to relate as well as you can. But I see that is somebody just not being able to express in the same way that you can. And sometimes maybe it's because you're a very generous person and you are a very empathetic individual. And so maybe there's just those different qualities, because of who you are and your, I guess if you want to call it your worldview, that maybe makes that different than other people's worldviews.
Yeah.
But I don't, they have a picture of like a child, right? And they talk about how it can only happen to certain people. And I guess if I was sitting next to Joe Schmo over here and he got handed $1 million, am I going to be a little jealous? Yeah, I'll probably be a little jealous. Say Joe Schmo got handed $1 million and I didn't. But I'm not going to shun him for it. I'm not going to get angry with him. And I have a friend at work, right? And I've this individual, he has a great job now. He's taken kind of a step up in the world and he's being very responsible as an individual. And, they're moving him through the company. He's getting raises and he's getting promotions. Now, I haven't gotten a promotion or a raise, but should I be jealous for him? Should I be upset that he's doing well in the company? No. I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he's able to succeed and to have things that he's never been able to do before because of the position he's been in. And so now he has that. And some of these, this article, I'll be honest, at least the beginning of that feels like that. Like it's just somebody that doesn't want others to feel the same thing that they feel.
This is not a deaf person who's written this. She's been involved with the deaf community and her parents were deaf people. But as the article continues, that's just a disclaimer. That's just information. That's a steady fact. I'm not insinuating anything particularly about that. But as the article continues, it's a nice article. I mean, she writes terrifically. Her argument is it's complete. I don't agree with it, but she talks about the cochlea implant, basically how most of these videos and how these people are hearing. Essentially, this is a device that connects the auditory nerve, and through a series of sensors and converting those into electronic pulses, we are mimicking what nerves do, what the brain synapses and all the connections do. And so we have digitized hearing to a certain degree, and it's not as high quality, but it's something. And so these devices are wonderful, but they do not apply to everyone. I personally am not applicable to a cochlea implant. My cochlea, which is a snail shell shaped thing in the ear. It's a weird little spiral bone, and then there's the hammer anvil, and I think it's the nail. There's 3 bones in there. All kinds of little things that are happening there, and people lose their hearing from a variety of different ways. I had tubes,
and only God could put them there too, right?
Oh yeah. He designs them broken. This is another part about my my never really believed. Or having believed is because I essentially from a very, very young age, I was broken. I mean, I was broken. My hearing was gone. I was bullied and picked on. I had special apparatus for hearing because technology wasn't as good back then. So like my hearing loss was something that basically said, well, why would somebody do this intentionally? And so I never really had that belief. But back to like the story is that the cochlea implant itself, it only works a certain way, and it won't work for me. I have auditory nerve damage, but it isn't the same kind of nerve damage that they fix with the cochlear implant. So the people that are applicable that can actually have this, it's a very low number. So even that's what you were saying, like the 1 in a million people, the people that are getting this, like there's tons of deaf people who just simply weren't able to get this. This isn't something that, oh, you have enough money, you can just hear now. And so it's still a very rudimentary and it's a very primitive technology to fixing everyone's hearing. It's kind of like why didn't Jesus get rid of blindness instead of just fixing one person's blindness? It's the same situation, right? That we haven't cured all of deafness. And so I don't, if it's an unconscious resentment or a variety of things, like humans are complex creatures, man. And so this could be all kinds of stuff that we're seeing in here. And so the few people who do get to hear again, it's awesome. It's great for people like me. I don't have any jealousy that I can't wear your cochlea implant and hear without any kind of, I have to put batteries in hearing aids and wear hearing aids and stuff. But if someone else can get it, man, and just go, great for them. That's an awesome story. And so the tearjerker thing it's not a jealousy thing for me. That's a wonderful thing that this person has, I guess, added a complexity to their experience in the world. And we only get one experience, one short life in this world. And if I can help someone hear again, more power to you.
And you talked about this a little bit last year. You wrote a blog about, the 4th of July. And you wrote a blog about with your wife, when she was pregnant with your daughter at the time. And you kind of shared some very personal things in the blog about, what would happen if, your daughter turned out to have a similar condition as you. If, at some point you had to explain to her. And you explained some of the struggles that you feel that you're going to have. And so we're a year down the road. Your daughter's, what's your daughter,
Evelyn.
9 months old now?
Yeah, she's about 6 and some change.
So 6 and some shit. I'm aging her 3 months already.
Mm-hmm.
But moving a little bit down the road, how about this for other people that have to go through that situation? What advice do you have? I mean, do you still have some of those concerns?
Not particularly for her. I don't really have any concerns. They're able to do hearing tests very, very early, and they essentially do like brainwave checks to see like sound in your brain goes, and they can see it on a chart, and they're like, yeah, this person can hear. It's awesome. I had never, I was like, can't you hear? Is it good? I have the paper in a folder. I have a folder of like her first hearing test that she passed. I don't know why that's sentimental for me, but I was just like, that is great. And so she can see and hear, and she's, as far as I can tell, vocalizing very well. She's obviously still very young, but the concept.
She hasn't cussed yet at you yet.
Yeah. Well, as soon as she starts saying words, then I'm gonna have to start limiting my cursing. I already limit it, but I curse more, not in podcast form. But the basic concept that I was running through was like an atheist participates in evolution, and the broken ears and fears is my idea for that blog series. And it's just essentially that no matter what happens, I am 100% for her, and I can offer advice and things like that. But it would be an absolute wonderful thing if she can hear, and if she can't hear, and all the people who can hear and can't hear, they're just as wonderful, and they're just as unique and just as beautiful. And so these kinds of things are important to keep in mind, that we all can have this really great emotional response to these videos and not be like laughing at someone's problem or something along those lines. Like I think it's malicious and sad that that's what you see when you see a video of something that good, that nice, that warm in a world of just, let's face it, it's rough out there nowadays. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I pay attention to the rest of the world, and it's always been this crazy. But in a world that's just been, violent, aggressive, and dangerous, and someone shares a happy video that can get an emotional response and make you smile, that's there's nothing bad about that in my eyes.
And I will, as the article closes out, it talks about, one of their other fears is that, people share viral videos because it makes them feel better, because it's easy to watch a 60-second uplifting video, get tearful, get the endorphin rush, and then move on. And I actually agree with that. I do actually agree with that part of the article. That's probably the only part I can personally, feel that I agree with in the article. Because to a point, it kind of goes back to, your computer desk.
Slacktivism.
And how many of us are, slacktivist activism. That's what it's pertaining to. And I agree with her on that. In that aspect, I do agree that, if all we're going to do is share a video, feel happy about it, then, we should probably be doing more. But at the exact same time, the difference in sharing one of those videos is you're creating a social awareness. And some people don't have the ability to be extreme activists. Not everybody can do what, somebody like Sarah Moorhead can do in her life. We not all of us are meant to be able to do that, or I guess not meant, but not all of us were able to grow into that. But this thing is, if we can create things on a social level, if we can create awareness, at least that's a small step. And if we look at what's happening in the trans community, a lot of people are like, well, let's create awareness. And I'm saying, great, we've hit that awareness. We're creating, public, national, widespread awareness. Now it's time to take it to the next level. And I think the same thing can be said for the hearing impaired. If we can move faster, if we can pick things up, we can help make science move a little bit faster to try and give us a better outcome at some point in the near future.
You want to know a fast way to do it? Do you want to know a way that anybody can essentially help these things move faster? The best way to do it is support scientific advancement. Stem cell research, guess what? You fix stem cells, guess what? You fix my ears. That my nerve damage. If a deaf person can hear from broken audio nerves, that means we've already solved paralyzed people, because the stems or the stem cells that fix your nerves, I guarantee you the first place they're going to apply those is going to be in fully paralyzed people. The people who can't walk. That's the goal, to fix the broken legs and fix the non-working legs and arms and the quadriplegic and paraplegics. Eventually they'll get to my ears. But if they solve the mystery of the nerve, they're going to fix my ears. So nerves and stem cells and scientific advancement, if you want to fix these things, the ethical problems of stem cells and stuff like that, learn about it, read about it, find out some more, and support that kind of stuff, because the grants and the interest in engineers and scientists and children who are involved in the sciences, those are the things that are going to solve these problems later on in life in our country's future. And so that would be the best place to do it for me. And that's basically, well, it's not a surprise that I say support the sciences, but literally, I always say this, is that, go stem cells. I love the Christopher Reeve Foundation and the stuff that they did to try to get him back up and moving before he passed away, and they still do. His foundation is still strong and wonderful, and those kinds of things. That is a positive, progressive movement in my eyes. So that would be a good place to start if you want to get involved in it, and it doesn't involve standing in front of government buildings or protesting or whatever. It's just like when you donate to a politician or a political candidate or something, because you're not going to go interview your favorite scientist to kind of solve this thing. This is basically money for grants and for scientific research. So you can look into that and donate.
Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your life. We hear a lot about mine sometimes, but it's nice to get some of that other side for something that you've had to live with for your whole life. So thank you everybody for sticking around. We're going to come back after this quick commercial break with a little bit more Cellar Door Skeptics. We're going to be talking about the Panama Papers and offshore banking. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old Atheist Show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah. And this is David from the God Theory Podcast. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics. Prepare for the revolution.
the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you so much for sticking around through our last segment. We have had a very amazing show tonight. We talked about morality, breastfeeding, hearing loss, and now we're going to talk about the bank data dump. So this article Chris brought to my attention earlier, I guess technically last week, and we were talking about it a little bit, and I kind of was a little skeptical because, you know, I see these things and I kind of wonder, well, what the hell is this? And you know, is this just another propaganda? Are we just looking at another propaganda? But this article, you know, that Hanna mentioned seems to have been shared by a lot of popular different websites and magazines. And so I thought it would be a good point to bring in a conversation piece. And Chris Hanna had some very opinionated things to say about it. So, Hanna, why don't you break it down and tell us a little bit about what was interesting about this and what the whole Panama Papers issue is?
Well, the whole Panama Papers issue is basically people circumventing any kind of national tax code, any responsibilities to the society that you're part of, shell corporations, putting your money in places where you don't have to be responsible, blah blah blah. All these conspiracy theory things that people have been talking about for years and years and years, and are kind of socially accepted as, yeah, the richest people are doing all kinds of stuff to get through loopholes and not pay taxes. Well, 2.6 terabytes of information, so 2,600 gigabytes worth of information have just been released that are essentially just the paper trail for all these fake corporations, all these corporations that are set up specifically for a very specific intention of saving people money who are putting their money in these corporations and doing things outside of their national boundaries. So outside of the United States, outside of Great Britain, outside of Saudi Arabia, wherever you're trying to hide your money from the government, these offshore businesses are where you would put them if you have the means, the resources, and the connections, blah, blah, blah. And so this is one of the biggest leaks ever.
So I'm going to stop you there a second, though, because how is that legal? I mean, I understand that people do illegal things. I mean, we obviously have illegal drugs, you know, and people murder people, and people do all those things. But you would think in today's society, in today's world, we wouldn't have all of this, or at least this large of a thing. I mean, the way this article makes it sound, 2.6 terabytes worth of data just seems like an awful lot of frickin' data that is going around right now. So how can that happen? I don't understand, I guess.
Well, it's like, are you familiar with international waters and the rules involved there?
A little bit, yeah.
So like,
I don't. How about this? I've never done enough research to know the actual legal jurisdiction aspect to it. I could just tell you based on movies I've seen and shows I've watched about.
So the idea is just like it's like this worldwide place that there are no real rules. It's kind of like ethics, human ethics, the Geneva Convention, things like that. That, you know, humans matter. You can't just kill people and stuff like that. Well, when it comes to the economic world, the globalized economy, the worldwide marketplace is still pretty new. It's kind of in its infancy. And so the rest of the world, the smaller portions of the industrialized world, or not even industrialized, like small countries that are trying to make their way up, they're using and doing any kind of advantage they can get. And one of those advantages is basically, we're not regulated. We're not part of the UN, or if they are, they don't pay attention to us. You can put out your money here. We won't tax you at all. Dump all your money here. We'll take it. We'll use it. We'll do what we can with our economy in our country, and it's a benefit to you. You can save tons and tons of money, and so it's the whole world is not part of one giant global economy yet. There isn't like this overarching big brother or this new world order that keeps all these things in place to kind of ethically regulate and control. And so between nationalism and all of the issues there, it's like the United States trying to tell Great Britain that you have to pay your taxes. Well, how do they do that? Well, these small countries are taking advantage of that stuff as, you know, tax liaisons and places where you can hide your money. It's not it's legal because nobody can really enforce it. And so there are basic global regulations for disclosing, okay, well, my country has these tax rates and this is the kind of stuff that we do. But other than that, for just businesses and global corporations, this is new uncharted territory, and everybody's doing everything they can to save as much money as they can.
So, okay, so if that's the case, and I guess I can see why people try and hide their money. I don't agree with it, I guess. I pay my fair share of taxes, but I can understand, if people are doing it in that there can be a safe haven. So what's so special about the Panama Papers, and how do we know that this is just not another larger conspiracy that's feeding into either this presidential election or somebody's own theory? How can we actually validate some of these things?
Okay, so the Panama Papers, the important thing is for finding out who is doing this and why and what and how it's valid, is that there's a really large number of people who are running this situation. Like the Mossack Fonseca is the name of the company, and they sell these shell corporations on offshores and do all that stuff. But there are two different groups, and it's this I'm gonna say it's like Northern European. It's Seduce Zitang. I'm going with the phonetics because that's the best I can do with my basic. I don't speak any other language but English. And then there is the ICIJ, was an international consortium of journalists. Investigative journalists, International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, and these are groups that call it the Guardian and all kinds of Univision, all kinds of different magazines and stuff. And so the reason why we're the rest of us who are pay attention to this kind of stuff are saying that this is probably a valid and trustworthy source is because there have never been this many major journalists and media organizations in 76 different countries. It says 400 journalists and 107 media organizations. So this is a massive group of people that are all looking at the same data and essentially coming to the same conclusions. And that's the reason why we're like, okay, this has got some legitimacy, and we're just kind of trying to figure out what the data says. And that's essentially why to start, we're getting a pretty good idea of what's happening here. But when it comes to what is really going on, who's involved, there's all kinds of conspiracy stuff that's happening right now, and we're waiting and we're trying to find out the full data because they have, like I said, it was 2.6 terabytes of information. That's 11.5 million confidential documents and even more emails and notes and stuff. So this is really complicated and it's tough to get your head around, but it's important because this is like that underground banking system that's like a network of people just avoiding.
Is it kind of like the Silk Road?
Like the what? Oh, yeah. It could be something similar to that. It's essentially people in not the dark net. That's what the Silk Road was. Is in the dark net, which is completely unpoliced. But this is kind of like that. This is unpoliced banking. You can do whatever you want, and the owners of the companies usually are given aliases. They're never giving their information, and so you're banking incognito.
And that's crazy. That's just crazy to me. I mean, I guess if we look at the housing crash and we look at all those other issues that they had, you would almost think that a lot of people should frown on this. And I guess maybe they don't. So you had an article, to kind of shift it a little bit. You had this article called How to Explain Offshore Banking to a 5-Year-Old. And I read through this, and it's kind of amazing in some aspects of it because, it helped me understand a little bit more than I had before. And it said, with the release of the Panama Papers, revelations about the murky world of offshore banking are coming thick and fast. But how do you explain it all simply? And how do you explain that there are sometimes good reasons for using offshore banking? And so I'll ask you, I guess we've talked about some of the negative aspects of it. What could possibly be the positive aspects of it?
All right, so the explanation for what is exactly is happening is it was a guy on Reddit wrote it, and if you're not familiar with Reddit.com, check it out. It's just a massive site. Most people are familiar with it by now, but he wrote this really interesting explain it like I'm 5, and this is his explanation that he had, and I'll basically give you the overview in a minute. And then the good things, obviously, let's say you're in a country that demands, it's a very authoritarian, very totalitarian. You don't have any place you can put your money. You've made money, but what do you do with it? Well, you create a secret little offshore company and you send it through various whatever bitcoins or however you send money. And next thing you know, your money's not going to, I don't know, the beheader of the week, whoever's in charge of the regime change of whatever you're trying to stay alive in. Those kinds of countries, I wouldn't say it's bad to keep your money outside the government and try to get out and do whatever you can to get away from these horrible people. But the basic analogy is awesome, and it explains it as piggy banks. Is when you get your pocket money, you put it in a piggy bank. The piggy bank on a shelf in your wardrobe, but your mother knows about this. She checks on it every once in a while, and she knows when you put more money in or spend it. Now, one day you might decide you want your mom not to look at my money. I don't want her to look at it. So you go over to your friend Johnny's house with that extra piggy bank and you put your money in there. So you write your name on it and you put it in his wardrobe. So Johnny's mom is always busy, very busy, and so she never checks the piggy bank. So you can keep it yours and it stays there and it's a secret and your mom doesn't know about it. So all the kids in the area think this is an awesome idea. Everybody goes to Johnny's house, put their little piggy banks in there. All these little shell corporations. And so now Johnny's wardrobe is full of piggy banks from kids all over the neighborhood. And one day Johnny's mom does check the wardrobe and sees all the piggy banks. She gets very angry and calls everyone's parents to let them know. Now, not everyone did these things for bad reasons. Not everyone put their little shell corporation piggy bank with all their money in there for a bad reason. Eric's older brother always steals from his piggy bank, so he wanted to have a better hiding place so Eric's older brother couldn't steal from it. Tommy wanted to save and buy his mother a birthday present without her knowing about it. Azim just did it because he thought it was fun. But many kids do it for a bad reason. So Elizabeth was stealing people's lunch money and didn't want her parents to know she was stealing it. So she hid it there. Rise was stealing money from his mom's purse, and Bobby's parents had to put him on a diet, so he didn't want them to figure out that he was saving money so he could buy sweets. In real life, very important people were just caught hiding their piggy banks at Johnny's house in Panama. Their moms have all found out, and pretty soon we'll all know about which of these important people were doing it for bad reasons and which were doing it for good reasons or for unknown reasons. But almost everyone is going to be in trouble regardless. And that's kind of the idea of the show. So some of these people, like I said earlier, there's an authoritarian regime in your area, and they're taking your money. They're taking it all. You're hiding it from them or in any way, shape, or form of some kind of oppressive regime, and you want to save your money. Well, I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. And so those are the kind of people that may get tied up in this that really weren't doing it for bad reasons, but they got caught anyways.
And I guess that makes sense. You know, I mean, if you had to hide it because you were having issues inside of your own organization or inside of your own company, you know, or inside of your government, I guess I can understand why you would want to do that.
But I will say most of this kind of stuff happens when people who have a lot of money and it takes resources to be able to start your own fake companies and all this stuff. I will say I don't know the stats, but I would comfortably say my basic expectations that the majority of people that are implied in this stuff, they're not poor people trying to hide from an oppressive government. They're people with the means to make these kinds of things a reality. I have no idea how I would do this. I'm a lower middle class American worker when my basic pay is miles ahead of some third world countries. I mean, ridiculous compared to some people. And I have no clue how to hide my money in an offshore account. So that kind of tells you what kind of level of money we're talking about in order to figure that shit out.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Mitt Romney. Or there's an article, and I can't remember what, there was a gentleman that's actually from Michigan who kind of started a government, side government operation where he was getting all these government leaders, and he had this consulting company, and he ended up selling his services to some international communities that were banned by the United States and by the other world, had sanctions against them. And, you know, he basically had to quit doing what he was doing and started a different company. And then come to find out right now he's being investigated, you know, by the world police, if you want to call it that, you know, and he's being investigated for, you know, doing side deals.
Fraud.
In Libya. Yeah. Well, no, like actually like working with terrorist groups to, you know, help them.
That's terrible.
You know?
That's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And so, but that's kind of what this reminds me of. Is you kind of think about this, and I hear these things. I mean, he had to be hiding his money because his corporation, his new corporation, they didn't know. They had absolutely no clue that was that it was, you know, what it was. And when they started to find out, then they started getting investigated. They're like, oh, our hands are away from this one.
Well, one of the things about the Panama Papers is that we're hearing about people who are implicated in the situation, and we're hearing about the really big names. So like Putin and the Prime Minister of Iceland and most of his cabinet, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of England, his father had a shell company, and David Cameron was an investor in that. So he is secondhand, indirectly implicated in this situation. We're hearing about a lot of big people outside of the U.S. We're not hearing a lot about the U.S. Like, okay, because, I mean, we're Americans. Okay, what Americans are cheating? What Americans are cheating? Because those are the people that we can, hey, you don't deserve what you got or whatever. Those are the people that we can directly demand that they resign their post or whatever. And I haven't been able to find much about the Americans that are implicated. Well, I found a page, zerohedge.com, and we're going to include the link, but mostly it's investors and companies that are shell companies. It's just these people that are tied in because they just put their money there, but no real big names, no real big, like, what the hell? Why don't we have any major politicians that are caught? And so the surprising lack of high-profile names, this is according to Zero Hedge, could merely stoke the speculation of list scrubbing, which is essentially, okay, here's the list of people who are bad, but we've scrubbed the names of the people we don't want you to know about off. And then alternatively, this website hopes that it'll force the broader population to shift its attention to the true focus of offshore tax evasion. And the next part is a bomb that was dropped on my face. It says that perhaps the biggest in the world for tax evasion isn't offshore for us. The United States is becoming a tax evasion warehouse or store place, and I had no idea that this was kind of happening.
All right, so what does that mean? For in simple terms, you're basically saying that we're housing other people's money.
Yeah, the U.S.
And how is that even able to happen?
The U.S. is surprisingly accused of being a new tax evasion haven, basically because it's refused to comply with global disclosure regulations. So, like, when you do something with a business and when you do something in your country, there's disclosure. We talk about transparency in our government. Like, this is the information. This is what I did. I didn't do anything illegal. You can see all of my information. Well, the U.S. is refusing. We're kind of saying, we want to know what you all are doing, but we're not going to tell you what we are doing. And this is, some of that hypocrisy that the United States is accused of that makes the rest of the world hate us. And it's frustrating that we are to do as I say, not as I do sometimes as far as our ethics are concerned. But the United States is in places like, in Nevada, Wyoming, and South Dakota, we're creating corporations that are not required to disclose who is putting their money into them. So we're becoming a tax haven ourselves, just kind of like what's happening in Panama.
That's crazy. That's just insane. Where are they hiding the money in America? I mean, what organizations are taking that in?
Well, the Rothschild family, I'm sure you're familiar with it. One of the richest families in the world. They're centuries-old financial institution from Europe. But this is just a simple example of a place where money is being stored. Is that they opened a trust company in Reno, Nevada, a few blocks from Haraz and El Dorado casinos, and it's now moving the fortunes of wealthy foreign clients out of offshore tax havens such as Bermuda. It's subject to new international disclosure requirements, and they're moving them into the trusts in Nevada, which are exempt from these international disclosure. So they're moving them away from Bermuda. They're moving them away from the Swiss accounts, which were leaked not too long ago as well, and they're moving them away from all these previously known tax haven places, and they're putting them in the U.S. And so that gives you kind of an idea of what's happening as far as money and ethics and honesty and any of the other things that the really, really, really rich people in the United States are doing. It just makes me uncomfortable with some of these things that this was a complete surprise to me. I am completely I guess sad that this is something that the United States is being accused of. And if these things end up being true and if they're valid, it's more examples of why we need some serious major economic overturns and overhaul and a regulation in our country. Things like Citizens United and the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, banks being able to invest in horrible things. These things need to be checked and balanced like they used to be.
And I guess if we ever could figure out who it is or what it is, maybe we all have the duty to try and help them, because that just, I don't know, that's kind of the things, we go after money launderers, and that's almost what it feels like. We're turning into money laundering individuals.
What do you think could happen if you didn't pay your taxes this year?
I'd probably get billed next year.
You'd have people come down on your ass. Little you unimportant in the global spectrum of things, would get your ass chased down and screamed at and audited and all kinds of horrible things if you didn't pay your damn taxes. And all these people, like billions and millions of dollars, nothing. They put their stuff everywhere, and we're just, that's just what happens. Those are the kinds of loopholes and things that like that's why the economy is a big ticket item for any kind of political conversation and stuff for me. And this Panama Papers stuff is really important to me.
Well, it's been an amazing show, Chris. We've had a lot of fun. We've talked about morality. We've talked about breastfeeding. We've talked about hearing loss. We've now talked about people hiding money inside of the United States, and basically we're becoming what we hate the most.
That's a horrible. We're becoming what we hate. I hate that that's true. I really do. I love to think that the United States is this, not exceptional, but we're a good place, and we try to do the right thing. But it just doesn't seem like that these days.
And so for everybody listening and everybody that is still stuck around for the rest of this episode, make sure you stick around next week, because we have an amazing show planned. We're going to do a joint show, a topical show, with our friends over at Not Another Atheist Podcast. Jen and Keith, the Canadian, are going to show up and have a great conversation. We're going to talk about Celebgate, sharing illegal nude pictures. We're going to talk about the science of gluten-free diets. We're probably going to get into crazy shit Chris and Jen used to believe, because there's two of us now that had crazy upbringings. And we'll get a little bit of comedy in there from Keith. So make sure you tune in on iTunes. Give us a rating. It doesn't matter, 1 star, 5 star. Throw us a rating on iTunes, because it just helps. It helps others make the decision of whether they want to listen. Follow us on Spreaker, on Facebook, Twitter, and hell, even you can check out our new website. That's not super amazing, but it's just a little bit there.
Getting there.
It's getting there. So thank you all for sticking around tonight. And make sure you tune in next week for another amazing show with Not Another Atheist Podcast. Good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.